Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Hey, ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 da, 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 da. Ay, da, 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 da. It's 98 years of the Chagig Yula of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Frierdiker Rebbe writes that this is not only his Geula, but it's a Geula for Klal Yisrael. And you see that this ultimately this Chaim L'Chaim. Wow, so special. Shkoyach is shkoyach. A lot of times we tell stories of tzaddikim, but there's something special sometimes about stories of Chasidim v'Yanshe Ma'aseh, Anoshim Pshutim, Chassidim, people that are not Meshichma Magavoya, but people that we can relate to. And someone was here the other day, mentioned in Chabad, there was a very Choshev Yid, his name was Rebbe Tzin Shem Tov. His son today is, he has several sons, are famous shluchim. He has a son, Rebbe Avram Shem Tov, who runs Friends of Lubavitch in Washington, whose grandson is Shliach in Washington, v'chulei, v'chulei. Rebbe Tzin Shem Tov had the schools to be in the year 19 Tafresh Peidala, the Frierdiker Rebbe made an asifa. Well, l'choira a symbolic thing, but the Rebbe mentioned about it many times. In the Yud-Beis Tammuz Farbrengen, he made an asifa and he called 10 people, and he said he wants to make a krisus bris, and he's one of the 10 that they're going to fight until the last drop of blood. These are the words that the Rebbe told over. So this is not stam a guzma, but this is what the Rebbe told. Now, Rebbe Tzin Shem Tov, we know, was one of them. He was very young at the time. He was young. He was in his 20s. And Atuv Getana Oilam Umloi. Now, it happens to be Rebbe Tzin Shem Tov was very close to the family of Bachlal. Could be also because there were so many differs, but Bachlal, Bachsidim, the union of Achdus was a very important thing. Just an interesting thing. We don't have family pictures. How many family pictures do you have? So there's a picture, 1945, 1946, of my grandfather, my grandmother, there's the Kinderlach, and a Tzin Shem Tov. It's like a family member. My father's sitting on his lap. Yeah, it's like... So he told the Maizeda, my grandmother's father, was one of the 10 people. Rebbe Chonon Shagalov. So he was a fighter. He was a fighter. He was in Siberia for years. This guy Shem Tov. Yeah.
His son is the one on stage by Simta is yelling at.
Yeah, his youngest son. That's his baby. That's his baby. Yes. Yisrael Shem Tov is his baby. He's like his father. He's a fighter. He fights first and then he finds out the cause. So I want to tell a few Kishmaka stories about him. But I heard the story about him. I heard a story about him. He wrote in this Yisrael Shem Tov was bar mitzvah, Tavshin Yud-Gimmel, 1953, and he sent out Azmona. He lived in London at that time. He sent out Azmona to friends. One of the people he sent it to was a younger man, Reb Moshe Sternbuch. Today's Ravad of the Eida Charedis. He was a tall Talmud Chochem living in London. Abitzin sent him an invitation. And he got very irked. I'm going to show you soon the invitation. He got very, very nervous about it. Ad kedei kach, he wrote a letter to the Rebbe, Tavshin Yud-Gimmel, 1953, saying, your Chassidim are doing such nadisha things. The Rebbe wrote him back a letter. So today was Yud-Beis Tammuz. So before I started learning my regular sugya, I sat down my brother, I told him the story, and I said, let's look at the Rebbe's letter. Mamash Rashgocha Protis, a younger man walks over, and he says, what are you doing? And he says, I heard about this letter, and I got my hands on the letter, and I just sent it out, the invitation for my son's bar mitzvah, that nusach. How many people, they'll be so shticky, even a Lubavitch, that, so I said, do you have the copy of the original? He says, I have it right on me, a copy of the original invitation and a copy of the letter from the Rebbe to the Moshe Sternbach. So, as a special treat for tonight, I made a copy of the letter from the Rebbe to Rav Sternbach. And we'll learn it. This will be Poisel mit Dvar Malchus. You can never lose a Farbrengen when you start off with a Dvar Malchus, a Dvar Teure. And we'll start off the Farbrengen with this. As I said, as a Shaykhus Yud-Beis Yud-Gimmel Tammuz. So first we'll pass around. Here. Pass around it. Pass around. Here. Pass around. Here, you need some more? Here. There's plenty. Okay. I made 10 copies. So there should be enough. There. Paris pass this to Yoel. And then I'll look for here. Here. Hold it up for the Oilam to see. So you see the invitation. This is an invitation. This is an invitation that Ben Sien Shem Tov sent out for his son's bar mitzvah. Let me read it quickly, because every word over here is negay. You'll soon see which is the. This is the guy who screams. He does. This is the guy that screams by the. He's in charge of the Simcha Beis Hasheva. His bar mitzvah, 1953. He's not a young man. You should know. His bar mitzvah was 1953. Huh? He's been older than you your whole life. Okay, good. He's younger, yes. He's the baby. Talmud Yeshivas Manchester. He was very proud that his son was a Talmud Yeshivas Manchester. Or maybe it was like a hook and sink, because the Yeshivas Manchester then was a very choshev yeshiva. The Rosh Yeshiva was at Rav Segal. I don't know if anyone ever heard of Rav Segal, the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva. It was a very, very choshev Rosh Yeshiva. And he employed as the Mashgiach of Yeshiva, Rabbi Dubov, whose grandson is a shlich in Princeton. We had him here once for Yutas Kislev. Yes. So he was wanted to show off that. Could be also he wanted people to send his children to this yeshiva. He was poshut. He made him pay from the whole of England. He couldn't ID how many Yidden had a full beard when he came to England in 19. When he landed in England, in 1950, he made thousands of chassidim in London and in Manchester. People saw him. He was from a different planet. They saw he was a Talmud Chacham and he was sincere. And it got a brin and a fire. So anyway, he says, my son is a Talmud in Yeshivas Manchester. Hatamim Anayli Yisrael. Neira Yoed. Shetim Yitz Hashem Lamazel Tov B'Yem Beis. Tesvav Ada b'Shah 7:30 be'erev be'bayis whatever in London. Nevakesh kereveinu miyodeinu lava lishtata b'simchasenu lavorech es abar mitzvah sheyichya sheyiyeh yirishamayim chosed v'lamde. This is where the music starts. Yeah, but he wrote first Yirishamayim chosed v'lamde kevi kavonas v'rotzen hakodesh shel kvoid kedushas admir shlitim. Here's 953, a young Rebbe, still wearing a gray hat and a tie, and this should have been seen Shem Tov. How did he become such a devout chassid from the Rebbe? He was a Russian. He came from out of when he escaped from Russia with the Lubavitch Chassidim. Both my grandparents, they were all in Paris. At that time, the Rebbetzin also escaped with them, and the Rebbe came special from New York to read his mother. He went to Paris. The Frierdiker Rebbe told him to go. He should go by plane, and he told him to stay there for a few weeks. I think Mamish, the Frierdiker Rebbe set up the Rebbe. I see it in Plashat as a setup. What happened was that the Rebbe, he wore a gray hat, a straw hat. The Russisch Rebbe saw him. You would think, you know what happened when the Rebbe became Rebbe? Who were the devout Chassidim? The Russians. The Americans, they thought, nah, it's a modern guy. This is the other brother-in-law should be. What happened? How did the Lubavitchers know who he is? Because the Frierdiker Rebbe had sent him and told him he should stay for 6 weeks in Paris. He should Farbrengen with Lubavitchers and Zeus came out. And they saw through him in 15 minutes. And what happened? B'Mitzin Shem Tov told my uncle. My uncle was telling me this the other day that the Rebbe was in a hotel, and he was helping. He was in the room, and he saw the Rebbe picked up mail, and he saw all of a sudden the Rebbe's face, his color changed. He closed his jacket, he put on his gartel, and he's reading B'Dechilu Rechimu. So he walked over and he asked what happened. He waited for it to finish. He said, "I just received a letter from my shveh." So B'Mitzin Shem Tov realized this guy is. This is the hat and the tie is all the bluff. He saw, no, he saw that so they became devout chassidim. B'Mitzin Shem Tov, his big thing in life was establishing the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He wrote letters to all the world, to the older chassidim. We have a Rebbe. You should know. Anyway, by the way, the Lakota Sichos that he was like a big nudge. He would nudge the Rebbe to put out sichos, and he personally, the original ones, he printed them, and he asked the Rebbe, "Could we please print a book?" And then the Rebbe called it Lakutei Sichos. All the Lakutei Sichos we have is thank you to him, and he was a fighter. And now it's 1953, and he wants to establish that Lubavitcher Rebbe is, like he wanted. So he weaved into the invitation in big words that I hope that my son will be a Yerushalayim Achosn Alamdim Kefi Kavonas V'Rotzen Hakodesh Shel Kvoid Kedushas Admor Shlita V'Nirske Liras Boyo B'Chol Tzetzoeinu Achsidish Shenachas Ayidish Shenachas. Okay, that's this letter. And as I said, the invitation he sent to all his friends, and one of the people he sent it to was a young, handsome Talmud Chochem, the Moshe Sternbach. The Moshe Sternbach looks at this thing. He says, "This guy is nuts." Meshiga. In big words, he's saying that I'm asking the Eibishter that my son should be a chosid Yerushalayim Chosid Alamdim Kefi Kavonas V'Rotzen Hakodesh Shel Kvoid Kedushas Admor Shlita. What kind of funny thing in bold letters? He wrote a letter to the Rebbe.
We had the letter to give him.
Nope. But we see from the answer what he wrote. And the Rebbe wrote him back a letter. Yeah, exactly. I think this letter is kedai to read. As I said, this is the treat for tonight's Farbrengen. In the letter, you don't know who he wrote it to, but if I have here a copy that I took this morning from the original, you see he wrote it to the Moshe Sternbach. How do we have it? Mr. Moshe gave a copy of it to Lubavitcher Chassidim. Okay. B'maynal mechtovi b'tezayin ade b'ay ma'orel al nusach hazmon shekimel ma'arav chosid avosik v'chosid ois b'tzarchei tzibur yishirei elikim whatever. But Mareinu Rav Rebbe Tzin Shich Shem Tov Shadar Shluchei D'Rabbanan. The Rebbe considered him a Shluchei D'Rabbanan, a shliach. Asher anal mizborach shebeno yi Yerushalayim v'chosid v'lamdim v'kifi kavanos yirtzoni. That was the question that Rav Sternbach asked the Rebbe. Now, if you were a young Rebbe and someone wrote to you, you would write back, listen, this guy at Ga'ata L'chaim, he had a little too much L'chaim, whatever, no, the Rebbe wrote back a letter, unbelievable. Hine yadu the tefillah yavodah shebalev. K'mayim Razal, V'tzirichem li is bedibur. V'meila tzorich shia piv li b'shamim l'man shetoyu katfila. So the Rebbe says, in general, I want to give you an introduction. The general introduction is that when l'gabi tefila has to be piv li b'shamim. Chazal say eza avodah la'ovde b'chol avavchem eza avodah shebalev zu tefila. So it's not enough to say it bepeh. You have to also have it in your heart. That's a general introduction, I think. the Rebbe is saying. Kain moving is really the second point. Kain moving menusach tfilasene shebachol sheifret adam tfilasa reise meshubach. V'lo topic betfilat klolis. כשלכן מספר להם Yud-Beis Tzoyes, ולא בקושי כלבס, וגם הברוך צא לגוף כמה פרוטים מפורטים בכל אחד מהן. במילא אחד, okay, the Rebbe says that there is a mila, a person could say, Eibishter, please give me what I need. No. The Chazal made that there should be 12 brachas, and we try to say as much protim as possible. ומילא אחד אשר אין יסיימך על עצמם שילוך לפארת תפילוסה כדבוי מאיזה סיבה שתהיו, כפי דייטוי, נמצא אחד בידידה וסערוך כשום אחר לא יקול טוב באמס. ויש להבונה במבוק שיוסר מפורטו ועמוקה. הרי הוא מנעשייך תפילוסה וקשוסה, שמספר שתסמל בקשוסה כפי כמון הצבירות פלויני. ומויצים, על דרך זה גם בהלוכה, בכמה וכמה עניינים, ומהם בהתר עסקה, שכויסם בהתר עסקה כתיק לחז"ל, וכויסם זה אפילו המורץ. אומר לו, על פי דין תורה, כיוון שמויסי דייתו לחז"ל. So, the Rebbe is saying that a person has to be mefaret his tefillah. What happens if a person doesn't know all the details? So he says, I have a very good friend, the Rebbeinu Shalom, I have a very good friend. He knows, and he really cares for me, and he knows all the details I need. There's nothing wrong. So the Rebbe says, I give you an example in Igla. A person writes a star for Heter Iska. So one of the nusach that stands is Ketikon Chazal. Why? Because just in case I wrote up the star not so ayayay, so I'm telling you that this thing is predicated on what Chazal understood it needs to be. So just in case I didn't specify something, it's Ketikon Chazal. So the same thing here. Okay. The second thing says the Rebbe. Ashim yidei leitza yeva adam v'tachbula shal yetzer kulu v'ol chol lechem v'echel lefin yonah k'mayim arazal u'b'meila nachapes lekam adrochel l'val v'las adam u'b'frad beis rotzen k'shechot k'shetskabel tfilos sheshmokim yoyse l'shash yaval v'laviyar v'eze pniya b'vakashosoi b'tfilosim. If a person has an altruistic bakosha from the Eibishter, the Yitzhahara gets him mixed in. He doesn't want a Yid to have an altruistic bakosha from the Eibishter. As more as the Jew is going away from Gashmias, the more it bothers the Yitzhahara. The Rebbe says in this letter, the Chassid writes, he wants his son to be Yerushalayim. Not only should be a Yerushalayim, should be even more. Should be a chassid. I know lifnim yishur sadim. I feel it shall yirish shamayim. Ve'enim estapik vazel. L'mois avoid. Lamdan. Hainu sheishtamish bekoyach ha'toyre liyas yirish shamayim v'chassid. Asher itoyre emes. Shechesed omer al yivra. Moving. Sheyetzahore yechapes kol asher biyodoi. Leval v'latvila. So if you notice, the Rebbe was medayik even in the words that Ben Shem Tov wrote. The usual Chabad, the nusach is Chosid Yerushalayim V'lam. He didn't say that. He said Yerushalayim, Chosid V'lam. And the Rebbe even at those get touched. First, he's Yerushalayim. Chazal say that a Chosid is even more. He does Lefnim Yishur Sadim. And Alamden is even more. Because Aloy Amoretz Chosid. So once he's Alamden, he can do even more. Okay? So now that there's a Yid that has a Bakosha that his son should not be a Gvir, should not be an athlete, should not be a doctor, a lawyer, should not be a Oisher Godel, should be a Chosid, the Yeshamayim and Alam. So it's a Hore, he's scared, he's going to be mevalvel that he shouldn't have real Kavona in this Tefillah. V'miyef shebediber ha-Kaponim b'leiv, u'al derech mashkoz v'ramam soif hilchas Temura, yor de Teure l'soif daite shalom v'miktas yitzer hara, v'afa bisha noda v'hiktish efshe shechoz v'v'niche. That's why the Rambam says the Chazal that the Torah didn't allow a person because they know the Torah is Yord l'sefdaita shalodam, that if you'll allow him to be machlif for Meimir, for Sunday he's gonna give a better one, but Monday he's gonna give a worse one. So I think the difference of point A and point B. Point A is that a person might not know how to verbalize the details. So he's relying on the tzaddik. The second one is he might not mean it with his whole heart because initially he meant it, but the Yitzhahara is trying to chip away at his kavanah. So he's saying, I want this really the way this tzaddik who loves me, the way he really means it. Because that tzaddik really wants that my son should be a chosi yishamayim alam. So he's saying to the Rebbe Shalom, please do it based on his kavanah. ואחס ממיימר הזל, אומר להם, הביודעים שלא על דייתכם המני משביע אסכם, אלא על דייתי ועל דס המוקם. So there's such a thing that we say that the shvu is al das hamokim or al daiti. So the same thing here. Why did the Rebbe say in the first an example from Yud-Beis and over here from mashbi al das hamokim? It's poshut. Over there it's a contract. It's not negei kavonos. When you write a contract, not negei kavonos. Or is it in the contract? It's not the contract. So he's saying even though it's not in the contract, something is wrong. But I said ketikun chazal. It's as if I specified it. So even if I didn't specify what I want for my children, but there's a tzaddik, he knows what's good for my children. Kefirotz the tzaddik. The second point is that maybe I don't mean it. A tefillah has to be avodah shebalev. That I really want, I'm not just saying I want my son to be a big lamdan, but really I want him to be a basketball player. But I'm saying it lip service, because all the Lubavitcher Chassidim say by the Bar Mitzvah, L'chaim, my child should be a chosi yishamayim alam. But really I want him to be a big rich man. So therefore, what's the eitzah? That he gives over al das hamokim. He gives a shvu al das hamokim. Kein makshe shelachoyde poshut shatfila tzarich liz b'derech klav liz ma'oser etzayin Hashem yizborich mebli lahaskir aderech sheroitze bo. The tefillah should be that I want the Eibishter should make that I should be his oiser rotzen, not give him details. Chosid, Yishamayim, Lamdan, v'mechilas kvoite rosa eineke. Ukenal, shemikol nuschei atfila shetikna anshe knes agdoyle yidish shemefartim abakoshes v'atfilas at kama she'efshem. Uma shelaportu ad yoser, ukidei sheyenusach echer l'chov bnei Yisrael, aval gam nusach zeh mefurtu b'yoser. Ukenal. The next few words, if you look in the letter from Rav Sternbach, the Rebbe added the Ksav Yad. In other words, after the Rebbe added Ayin Rambam, Hilchas Tefillah, Perek Aleph, and Perek Vav. So, why did the Rebbe add it afterwards? Because the Rebbe realized that we're talking about Alamda, so he wanted to bring a Raya. If you look in the Rambam, he writes that when the Jews went into Golus, they stopped having a language that they were chatzim medabrim loshen kodesh v'chatzi ashdudis. So when a person wanted to ask, the tefillah wanted to ask his bakoshes tiktzer l'shoinim alavakashim, and Chazal wanted that a person should ask befrotus everything he needs. So therefore they were mektaken 18 brachas and Yud-Beis brachas b'tzorchei adam to all the details of what he needs. And in Perek Vav the Rambam says that if you need something extra, you're supposed to add it in the tefillah. Mashal, if you have a choyle, you should add it in Reifei Choylem. If you need more parnosa, or you need something parnosa, you add it in Baruch Aleinu. And for any general request, you should ask it in Shemak Aleinu. So we see Alochim Mefaresh as the Chazal did want that the tefillah should be mefuretes. Not we should say, oh, the you know what I want, so you know better than me. No. Chazal wanted that the tefillah should be mefuretes. And therefore they made Yud-Beis pratim. And within every prat they said that if you need something specifically, add it. Ha'emes akit. Shesofek hoy beyodim lanas al hashaylim loy. Kiven sheladav v'neine hine b'chol hazmanim efrat b'zman ha'iznu zeh nimtza harbe shekavanos hakushia. There's a lot of times people that when they ask a question, the question is not a question, it's an answer. B'fra b'derech shelahur guluba. If it's a derech and avodas Hashem that they're not in that derech, when someone's going to ask why you're not going in this derech avodas Hashem, you're from the Einiklach of the Vilna Gaon. It's a suffix if he wrote Zichas or anything. I doubt that this young Talmud Chacham wrote Ich bin Aben Achaben from the Gra. He didn't write anything. He wrote a letter with three lines. But the Rebbe said, even if there's a person that is derech and avodas Hashem is different, but he sees that there's another derech and avodas Hashem. So sometimes the easy path to not to explore that derech, hatirutza yoyse kal hu leime sheyesh lekushle ala derech. The easiest way to say I don't have to explore the other derech and avodas Hashem. Have a kasha. There's a funny guy, an old man at Betzin Shem Tov. He's writing his Monas Hazoy. That's what Chassidus is all about. You want that I should open up Alakuta Torah, Torah Or, Anoim Melech. You want me to open up a Kedushas Levi, Atanya. Look at these guys. Look at these guys. So the Rebbe is saying a lot of times people have a kasha. It's not a kasha. It's a teretz. Asheroz ain't teyelas kol kach batirus. So then, if I'm going to give you an answer, what's the teyelas? Your kasha is nachnishkin kasha. Your kasha is a teretz. However, kivish kikushis loy ninalu. Because if I'm going to answer, it's not going to help. You're going to have more kashas because it's not about the teretz. However, I don't know you. Shebevade en kavanos elo l'toiv. Heine lahazber loy dove shem dayin lo nizdam loy b'micht b'neyov. Just because Taka was a peloton, he never saw people write such a nusach. Av shenimtze b'dugmas b'kam even though in Chazal we find dugma to it, I can as well like just explain. I don't know if you notice, like they say in Bachsidim, that the reason we take l'chaim by Farbrengen is that one of the is before the doctor puts a shot, he takes alcohol and he rubs it very well. So that's why we take l'chaim. Sometimes we want to give each other a little musaf in a friendly way, techocha. So therefore we put a little rubbing alcohol. In every letter that ever puts the rubbing alcohol very, very nicely. But there's always the nakuta. That ever saying, I'm not sure if you're writing it as a question, or you're lazy to look into another derech and avoid the Hashem. But I'm going to answer you anyway because I'm hoping it's not stam that you're lazy. You really want to look into another derech avoid the Hashem. Elamai, you see up as funny things from Chassidim. So I'm going to answer the taka. There's a mocker in Chazal for this. Bebracha l'chag Pesach kosher v'sameach. Nichte b'tzidik. Kemuven im yesh le'eza ha'orez ba'anal asanya likres oisa. V'shtadl gam lanas and leim kefi yochelti. If you have a order on what I wrote, I'd like to see it, and I'll try to answer as much as I could. Okay, very humble. A order. This order is a kicker. B'diuk evesi shnei dugmoas hanal. Heute, and the Rebbe says, I brought these two dugmas b'diuk. Even though, as I explained before, there are two different nakudas. And that's what the Rebbe, for the union that I might not, the would explain everything I need. So he said the union of heteriske. And for the thing of my heart, so he says the shvual das amok. But that's nice. But instead of heteriske, he could have brought other things that are contracts. Another 10 examples. Instead of shvual das bezdin, he could have done another 10 examples. Why did I pick dafke this example of heteriske and dafke this example of shvual das bezdin? Kinyan ashvu is inyan avodas adam a meschelos meisa bar mitzvah. Shenasa mushba v'oimet b'harsina. V'akavona b'zahid ibis beheter iske. Kimavur b'maymet kvoy kedushas moiri v'chom admor zeichet tzadeh v'kodesh l'varocha. Nafshe begins in menoinim schusi yogen aleina dibra masche. Taime kitev sachere des shnas tofshin tes. Huh? Unbelievable. But this is a mimer that Friedrich wrote Yud Shvat Toshin Tes. 1 year later, he wrote the mimer Basa Lagani for Yud Shvat. And he starts off the mimer saying that the Eibush and the Yid are always doing business. And he goes through like what the heteriske is up in Nigla, and he explains, mamish 5-6 lines, maybe more, 8 lines, what's heteriske. And he says that the Eibush gives the neshama extra koiches even though the Yid doesn't deserve it. Why? Just like an investment. What's the idea of heteriske is that it's not nibis. The extra money is really it's a business venture. Why? Because the Eibishter wants to gain. The Yid gains and the Eibishter gains. Not only the Yid gains, the Eibishter gains also. Unbelievable hezbollah about this. Apichsidis. The Rebbe says the reason I picked these two dugmas, the emes is, you would think that Rebbe sort of two dugmas. It's funny. Why did I pick these two dugmas? I don't know. You were nudnik. You asked me a question. I'm nice enough. I'm answering you. The Rebbe, you see the diuk otzim that the Rebbe had. You see the diuk otzim that the Rebbe had in his letters. He's writing to a younger man. I gave you dafka these two dugmas because mushbavoim med mar Sinai a bar mitzvah bocher, because before that is chinuch. Mushba Harasin only starts at the bar mitzvah, which is, by the way, an interesting chiddush you see from the Rebbe. And second of all, the idea of Rebbe is that's avodas Hashem in this world. Chazal say, "Azabim v'izbim v'tagir itkri." If a man sells and buys, he's not a businessman. You're only a businessman if you turn a profit. If you're not turning a profit, you're not a businessman. Megedreit, sefadreit. You have to make a profit. So you have to bring home. So he's talking to Goyim. You got to bring home the bacon. He didn't say you got to bring home the matzah balls. You gotta. So you have to make. You have to make a profit. So the Eibush says to the Yid, if it's hard for you, you avoid this big nisyonis. I'll give you extra koiches, but I'm giving you it on loan. It's chetzi milvia v'chetzi kilkodim because you're going to gain and I'm going to gain. There'll be a new oil that'll be all the oilamus. Yishuv v'shev v'rab v'chol oilamus. So you're going to gain and I'm going to gain. And like someone just the Rebbe probably wanted to pique his interest. That it's interesting. The Friedrich Rebbe goes through 7-8 lines and nigla, pure nigla, and then explains it up and he's hoping that that the person who got this letter will actually go and open up the Maimed and give a look and it's a Geshmaka Maimed, and then he'll find that Derech Hadosha in Avodas Hashem. Muzge Bazeh Hetek Mechtavi Kloli L'Chag HaPesach Asher Be'etach Ya'anyen Es Kvoi Teiroso Sheyichya. The Rebbe used to write a letter for every Chag HaPesach, 42 years of Bnei Yisrael. In the last few years here in Beis Menachem Mendel, we have the minig that we learn in a shir. We go through the Ha'oris, the Iyun. So the Rebbe said, I'm giving you a copy of my letter for Chag HaPesach. Okay. Anyway, I did this as a special treat for tonight to learn. It's remarkable. You would think that Rebbe got a letter. I'm sorry, whatever this guy wrote, he wrote. He didn't answer that. The Rebbe did not answer that. The Rebbe said, but we're coming off the week of Gimel Tammuz and people are still going to the oil. And you see what the Rebbe is saying, that when a person wants to be mispalel and he's soymach, he says to the Rebbeinu Shalom, I might not know everything I need. And I didn't verbally explain it. And also he says, Rebbeinu Shalom, I might not mean it. I'm asking you, a bracha, my children should be Yiddish Shamayim. But maybe I don't mean it. And it has to be Dvarim Shebalev. Is Avodah Shebalev. But this tzaddik, he means it. He knows what, he really wants my children to be Yiddish Shamayim. So Rebbeinu Shalom, please make my children should be Yiddish Shamayim like this tzaddik would like my children to be Yiddish Shamayim. And the Rebbe says, this is always Gehal. So, L'chaim, as I said, we're coming from Gimel Tammuz, and many of us were already at the oil, maybe still going to go a second time to the oil. So the Eibush should be Tiskabel Tzloisen, and all the things that we want Beruchnius, and also all the things that we want Begashmius. Like the Alter Rebbe said, that a Yid, this Gashmius turns into Ruchnius anyway, which that's the whole idea of Heteriske. L'chaim. Ay. Yeah. Yeah. Chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. Okay. I think it's a very geschmack letter. As I said, Poshut this morning, I looked at this letter. I opened up the Maimer, Kitoif Tzachira. When I finished learning the Maimer was still open. Someone walked over to my table and tells me, "Oh, what are you learning?" And what are the odds that he would have a copy of the letter of the invitation for the B'tzin Shem Tov and a copy from an Rav Sternbach from the letter with the Rebbe's extra few words here and few words there in the Rebbe's signature. I want to tell you a story. That's the way. Yeah, apparently. Yeah. Oh, sure. L'chaim. How many more l'chaims? Another l'chaim. Sure, zwei Yidden on l'chaim. L'chaim. Have a drop on. You know, in Tronessa, we say Melech Oyer Tzedakah Mishpat. We say for Tzedakah and then Mishpat. The Alter Rebbe has a beautiful mimer. It says, I love him, Yedaitiv, because he teaches his children lots of Tzedakah Mishpat. But then, Friday night, when we daven, we say Kapitel 99, Tzadik Tes, and we say, Oiz Melech Mishpat, Mishpat Tzedakah, B'Yakev Atasisa. So we say over there, first Mishpat and then Tzedakah. And then the Baya Abram we say Tzedakah Mishpat. And over here we say first Mishpat, then Tzedakah. Chlal, the Alter Rebbe says, if you have Mishpat, you don't have Tzedakah. Tzedakah, you don't have Mishpat. The Gemara asks that in Sanhedrin. If I ask you for $100, but usually, either you owe me $100, can you give it back to me? Okay. Or could you please, I need B'toyed Tzedakah. But you can't say, you owe me B'toyed Tzedakah. I owe you the money, or you want it to tzedakah. It's tzedakah or mishpat. So the Gemara says that arbitration, that the David HaMelech is mechadish, that the best way of doing mishpat is through arbitration. Okay. Now to Rebbe saying that the Gemara says that in Baba Basra that a person had kitan shalmayim, and he's in the desert. If he's going to drink and his friend is going to drink, they're both going to die. But if he's going to drink and let his friend die, he's going to live. How does he know it was the same amount of water? It's a hypothetical question. It's an ethical question. The Gemara is asking. There can be 101 applications to this question. So Ben Petura said that they should both drink a half of a jug of water and they should both die. That no, that chayecha koidin and chayecha veirech, and that's what it's paskin in halacha. The Alter Rebbe says, the Alter Rebbe says that a lot of people have used this Gemara. They abuse the Gemara. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that's dova shava b'shava. It was a jug of water, but not if we're talking boss of a dogim, the zevach mishpoch, and the other knee doesn't have shoes to wear. That's what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. So I want to tell you a story about Rebbe Tzin Shem Tov, Bekesher to this. Rebbe Tzin Shem Tov was a very wanted man. In Russia. They kidnapped him, and they put him in jail. And he ended up in Siberia. For the rest of his life, he had frostbitten on his feet. The first time he was arrested, they didn't give him his film. So he did the same like the Frierdiker Rebbe did. He had a hunger strike. He had a hunger strike for 7 days and 7 nights. The Soviets broke it. They gave him his talis and film. 7 days and 7 nights. A few times they forced him to drink just a cup of water. But he didn't let them put any food in his mouth. And the Soviets broke. Verstehst? Why do they care? Why do they care? I don't know. But they care. The Frierdiker Rebbe did the same thing. The Frierdiker Rebbe did a hunger strike, and that's why they brought him back his talis film. It was 3 days. I have no idea. But they like to kill with a bullet. They don't want to do it with hunger. Ich verstehe nicht was. The Meshik, that's a great. The Rishoyim, it's very hard to understand the Rishoyim. Like you read these stories, same thing with Hitler, it's like, it's very hard to understand. It's very hard to understand, but the Rishoyim. So, so, in the he was Siberia. He took gestellt am Mishpoche. The Mendel Futterfass wanted his sister to marry a Yiddishamayim, Alam Nayid. So he went with his sister to Siberia. He found where he was. He was Masada Kiddushin for them. And he got married because he knew that he's going to wait till it's a quiet moment to get married. There'll never be a quiet moment. He had all his children, between one sentence and another sentence. Wow. But all his children were already born in Russia. By the time he left Russia with his 5 or 6, 7 children, they were all like born Ben Gavra Lagavra. So he was hiding in Tashkent. It was already a little easier because it was the middle of the war, but the Soviets still had it out against him. He was a massive Chevreman, and he traveled in the 20 years from 1920 till 1940. Er hat aufgestellt hunderte Yeshivas and Mikvahs, and he was a wanted man. They wanted him. And even though it was World War II and they got busy with other things, but this guy, they wanted him. And he was hiding in a house, and he can't live in his own house. Soviets are going to find him with his wife and children, little children. So he was hiding somewhere else. And the child comes into the room and tells him that there was a police officer that just came, and in the house was my brother and a Malamed. And the police officer took the Malamed and my brother away to jail, or whatever, to the police station. Ben Shemta didn't think twice. He jumped out of his room, and he's running in the street. And he chaps the officer, and he says, "Are you crazy? This is a child. This man is blind. You're taking a blind man to jail?" The Malamed's a little confused. So the bench looks at him. It's like Gefendant. So he ran away, and the child ran with him. So now the police officer is stuck. He says, "Come on, let me see your documents, man." So he pulls out a document. His name is Moshe Pinchik, and he's 60 years old. The guy says, you don't look a day older than 30, and you're not missing any teeth. So so he says, "What do you think? I'm from Poland." False documents. "I'm from Poland. We live a good life. We're not like the Russians that at the age of 60, they're missing most of their teeth." The kid said the police officer didn't believe him. He said, "You know what? You'll explain all this at the police station." So Bencha says, "Listen, you were sent to get one person, you got the other person." It wasn't true. You were sent to get Benson. You were sent to get, and you got. I think we're both going to be in trouble. He pulls out 500 ruble from his pocket and he puts it in his pocket. He says, let's forget about it." And the guy walked away. Mamish, to have the chutzpah to do such a thing. They're not scared. To have the chutzpah to do such a thing. So it's unbelievable. We grew up hearing stories and legends like this, like Ben Shemton, but as a child, this child was being taken away to a police station. 2 hours later, he'd probably be home. They really wanted Ben Shemtov. Why did he run out? Why did he run out? And this Malamed, they were out for him. They came for him. This dumb police officer didn't even chap who he came to get. So now that he got the wrong guy, they'll probably be back in a few hours. He ran out to put his life in the line. That's Abbas Yisrael. The Alter Rebbe says that what does it mean for a Yid? A Yid gives tzedakah to another Yid. Then he judges himself to say, how much do I need? The rest, he gives tzedakah. If another Yid needs, he gives to another Yid. He gives tzedakah. Then he judges himself. When a Yid does that, midah keneged midah, something happens, something remarkable. The problem is that the Goyim get sustenance from the Eibishter because they get from a high level where who cares if it's a tzaddik or a rasha? So they get unbelievable energy and then they torment the Jews. So we want that the Eibishter should tie the tzedakah to mishpat, but the reverse of what we do. We want that the Eibishter should give mishpat, they should judge the world, and give the betoides tzedakah to the Jews and not to the enemies of the Jews. But it's mida keneged mida. When a yid does tzedakah, he gives away, and then he mishpat. He gives, how much do I need? He gives away, and then he says, how much do I need? Then mida keneged mida, the Eibishter does it also. The Eibishter does it also that way, but the other way around. He does mishpat and tzedakah. That's what Inshmanes, and we talk about what we do, and Avraham Avinu is melech oyev tzedakah mishpat. But the Eibishter does mishpat tzedakah b'yankev atesisa. He does first mishpat, v'noikem al aliloisam. He's good to the Jews, but noikem al aliloisam. It's the same capital Tillim, 99. So therefore, by a yid is melech oyev tzedakah mishpat. Yidaiti v'she yetzavas bonav lasas tzedakah mishpat. For tzedakah, I give tzedakah to another Jew. Oh, what do I need for myself? I mishpat. I give a judgment to myself. What do I really need? B'schuzeh, the Eibishter does is therefore the Eibishter is mishpat tzedakah. The Eibishter does mishpat in the world, and he doesn't give to the goyim. It's noikem ala liloisa, and then tzedakah b'yankev atosisa. So L'chaim, as I said, that Yud-Beis Tammuz, Chag HaGeula, with the Frierdiker Rebbe, there was a lot of Chassidim that had this Mesiras Nefesh. And the reason I picked Ben Shem Tov is because he was one of, like I said in the introduction that we were talking about, that the Frierdiker Rebbe in 1924 had this Krisus Bris that the Rebbe said, which, as I said, is probably a symbolic thing. The Frierdiker Rebbe called 9 Chassidim and himself, and said that we're going to fight until we make a shavua, that we're going to fight until the last drop of blood. Most of the people that were in and on that shavua never made it alive, and the few that did were arrested, and it was their blood. Yeah. So usually in the Farbrengen Yud-Beis Tammuz we focus on the story of the Frierdiker Rebbe, but I figured that today we should talk a little bit of also stories of Chassidim that were around, that were devoted. The devout Chassidim of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that sometimes from a tzaddik can have a hunger strike for 3 days for thousands of film, we can't relate to it. But a person who's a regular guy like me and you, with the hunger strike for 7 days, that's remarkable. But put their life on the line to save another Jew, when they know what the KGB wants, and they put their. So that's a remarkable thing. So that's all part of the Geula of Yud-Beis Yud-Gimmel Tammuz. So the big thing in Chassidus is that shouldn't only be that this is a story that happened 98 years ago. It should be a redemption for us today. That our Avos Yisrael should be this way. Our devotion to our Avodas Hashem should be with this unbelievable force. We don't have these unbelievable nisyonos, but we do have nisyonos. We should be able to stand up to our nisyonos, which our nisyonos are not as big, but still, we have to stand up to them. So we should be able to stand up, just like these Chassidim that made the covenant with the Frierdiker Rebbe were able to stand up to their nisyonos. We should be able to stand up to our nisyonos. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, yeah, yeah, ah, yeah, 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 ah, yeah, yeah, like yeah, 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 da da da, ah, yeah, ah, ah, yeah, da, ah, yeah, yeah, ah, yeah, 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 Ay, 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 ay. Yeah, really funny. Ay, 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 ay. Hey, estamos. Ay, 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 Yeah. Moshe L'chaim. Ah, ah. Hey, yeah, 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 yeah. L'chaim, 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 L'broch.
Oh man.
There is a story that the Rebbe told in the Farbrengen Yud-Beis Tammuz, Tov Shalom Adalat. So Ashkocha Protis, Rabbi Greenwald just told me that that Benjamin Netanyahu presented the President of the United States with a special mezuzah.
Right now? Yeah.
Yeah, special mezuzah.
Kosher one?
Huh?
A kosher one?
No, but then, versteht sich? Like Rebbe HaKodesh, he sent Antoninus. Huh? He took from the missiles, the metal from the missiles, and the artist and made the shape of the bomber, the American stealth. Yeah, the B-2 bomber, that shape of that plane, and as a case for a mezuzah.
I thought it was a joke. I didn't think. I didn't think it was. I thought it was fake news.
Well, the hustlers, they made this shape, but they're already selling it on it, advertising everyone. There's just a case doesn't have to be a certain design. Like
No, for us.
But in this case, in the Bahamas, we don't put a case, right?
it just case or something.
Bibi did not give him a mezuzah like Minik Chabad. True Minik Chabad is not to use mateches as a case. For mezuzah, it's a shaloik if you Minik Chabad. But for the goyim is good. Huh? No, they would all not use metal. There's Indian, there's nothing to do with Chabad bemis. It's Indian api Kabbalah.
The point is they took this metal was supposed to kill Jewish
Yeah,
people. And now
it's not the Chabad. It's a whole chassidim that way. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, ich verstehe.
That makes a silver case.
Yeah. So the Rebbe told, not to have, no. Well, no. The main thing is not to have metal, not to have barzel. You have a picture of it? Huh.
I'll find it. I'm sorry.
So lately we've been talking a lot about Miftzah Mezuzah. And Miftzah Mezuzah, one of the campaigns that the Rebbe made, Bekesher, with winning over the enemies. Because the Hashem Yishmat says Chaveyecho. Chaim here. Here, pass it. Wow.
You see how it's got a little mic in there. So you hear what I'm saying. Flying the wall.
Yeah, we'll tell you what else is inside.
Careful, don't cut my cloak.
Here you see it all clear.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
With the rocket going and the plane, this is a
He gave him a mezuzah, and the mezuzah case, he used metal from the rockets that were sent from Iran, and they made it into a beautiful shape of that American plane that bombed the nuclear reactors in Iran.
B2.
B2.
But usually we don't have like this, huh? Like
A mezuzah, yeah, they put a mezuzah. But the Gemara says several stories. First of all, Artavun, the story that we learned the other day by Motzei Shabbos, the Yerushalmi, Artavun, and the Rebbe HaKodesh, the several Gemaras.
Give it to his daughter.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll stay to
Yeah, I'll state the story in Artavun, it's Yerushalmi.
Still, they have a big medal made out of rockets.
Right.
Still like that.
So, first of all, L'chaim. L'chaim, L'hoides L'hala L'shimcha Godel. So,
America should say Chaim also.
How do we get ourselves to do the Kriya sitting the Torah Chizuk in the Hayim? What are we supposed to do? How do
yeah,
we convince ourselves?
how do we do
It's
that?
a tough one.
Erst of all sagen
He
L'chaim.
doesn't even say Berab. He says Kriya sitting.
Yeah, Emes.
Take off a couple of minutes from the phone.
Yeah, that's it.
L'chaim, L'chaim, L'chaim.
Chaim. Square. Chaim. Kind of a miracle in the shul also.
Amen. Amen.
Very, very fast.
Amen.
Should do every level over there by Rosh Hashanah.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Amen. L'chaim, L'chaim.
Absolutely.
So the Rebbe told the story that the Frierdiker Rebbe was called for an interrogation,
Don't drink. No, nobody eat it.
and they, unfortunately, some of the interrogators themselves were Bnei Yeshiva, Rachmana Litzlan, who felt, yeah, B'imkei Klippus. And at some point, they got very angry. I mean, there's a lot of stories, but I want to focus on this story that the Rebbe said. And they said, Lubavitch Rebbe, do you know where you are? In other words, you know the severity of your situation. You're playing games. At the beginning, he said, I want to tell a story. So they said, you're not here for stories. So he said, when I speak, even the Misnagdim listen. So and then he told them a whole story. The moral of the story was that, that al da'at atfuch v'soif ma'atfech yetufun. That the Pirkei that he saw the skull in the water. He said, so he said, your time is also going to come, and which is exactly what happened. But because Stalin wanted to make purges in the thing, and the first thing he wanted to get rid of all the Jews, and Taka, they did. All these people that did the dirty work for Stalin for all these years, Rachmana Litzlan, he killed them. So they got very upset, and they said, Lubavitch Rebbe, do you know where you are? So he said, yes, I know exactly where I am. There is a place which is Chayiv Mezuzah, and there's a place at Potem Mezuzah. For example, Abeis Hakisei, and Abeis Dir, and Abeis Sar, there's Potem Mezuzah. I'm in a place that Potem in a Mezuzah. Why? Because like a toilet, it's a bathroom, it's a filthy place.
Wow.
So the Rebbe said, yeah. So the Rebbe said that L'choire, that because he was a tzaddik and every tenua by him, and Befrat, he wasn't playing games. He wasn't, playing games with his life. He wasn't. It wasn't like the life wasn't important to him. He was Mesidas Nefesh. So in this Farbrengen, there's a Geschmack Sicha. We'll do it with once on a Sunday night, not now, because we're Farbrengen. But the Rebbe said the Nekuda, because at that time the people were arguing that the Rebbe is coming out with a campaign that we should tell every Jew that through mezuzah it will protect you. A mitzvah we should do altruistically, not for protection. The Rebbe said it's not true, because we find the many Maimari Chazal, Shulchan Aruch says in Shulchan Aruch that a person has a mezuzah will live a long life. And so we see that there's this unique thing about mezuzah that it has shaykhs with protection. Anyway, that's the Rebbe said that the Frierdiker Rebbe did not have a mezuzah. But kol oisik ba'oiris toiris oila ki ila yikriv oila. So just like Reb Shimon Bar Yochai couldn't do the mitzvahs begashmis. So the Alter Rebbe said he did them beruchnis. So because he couldn't do the mezuzah begashmis, but unfortunately his tormentors were Yidden that also chayiv to learn Torah, and the din that Abei Saki says part of mezuzah. He didn't say it as a joke. He said it as a din in the Torah. That's a din in the Talmud and the Shulchan Aruch, and they're also chayiv to learn Torah. And through talking divrei Torah about the mezuzah, because he couldn't do the mitzvah, kol ha'oisek b'Torah soila ki ila yikrev oila. It's a remarkable thing. A person's life is in danger, but he's thinking about how he could bring in the mitzvah of a mezuzah. As I said, the inspiration of Yud-Beis Tammuz is that everyone here has nisyonis. It's no such thing. Everyone here has nisyonis. The shaila is how we get the courage to stand up to them. When we see the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Chassidim who stood up like lions, Chazal said, "Ilay nagdu lechananya mishol v'azarya." If they just they threw them into a fire. But what if they didn't throw them into a fire? They would torment them. What would be? That's the Gemara's expression is. Kila, we don't know what would be. Here, there were people that were tormented for 20 years, 25 years, and they stood strong. The Frierdiker Rebbe wanted the mezuzah, so he figured out a funny way of saying it. Dvar Torah, halacha about mezuzah. Me and you, if we want to influence Yidden, it's easy. Easy shmeezy. Mamish, it's easy. You see a Yid, you talk to him, Yidden are like, you see an unbelievable Esoidus. Yidden are standing there, he's Esoidus. I was Sunday, I was with the kids, we went to a Chanukah Sabayis of Chabad House in the Berkshires, the Lenox, Massachusetts. Right next to the Chabad House, mamish next, is Tanglewood. The Boston Symphony Orchestra comes there every summer on the Sunday, and spielt. And so I went with the kids. I always tell my kids, when we go to a place like this, we're making the biggest Kiddush Hashem. You don't have to do anything. Just by walking, you dress siniyas, and you're an Oga Toiva, nothing. You don't have to do anything special. So thousands of people there. And the Yidden, it's mamish just like meklepetzich. It's like who do you think are the volunteers that are there? Which old ladies? The old Yiddish bubbies. Oh, Rabbi, can we give you a seat? No, I bought the lawn seat for $20. I didn't pay $360. No, Rabbi, we give you a seat. No, I just want to take it. I think more people are talking about the Flynn family that was there than the conductor. We wanted to see where the conductor is, come in the front. Okay. It's unbelievable. It's Yidden have mamish meklepetzer, and the people are so receptive. People want to hear what we have to say. The Frierdiker Rebbe thought of a trick of how to bring a mezuzah. Me and you, we meet a Yid. You have kosher mezuzahs in your house. You have to check them twice in 7 years. You have to they have to be put in the right place. I could hook you up with the local Orthodox rabbi here, and he'll come check out the house and check the mezuzahs. He might check your house and find there's some little kinderlach in public school, and she'll maybe convince to schlep them out of public school and put them in yeshiva. But that don't tell them maybe right away. But you could talk. The LMI. Sometimes we have our own inhibition. We have just our own inhibition. So when we look at the Frierdiker Rebbe, we look at his Chassidim, who had such courage. So we say that the Nisyonis we have are small potatoes. They're nothing. Yidden today are so receptive. And therefore our Nisyonis are nothing compared to this. But still we have Nisyonis. It's silly to say we don't have Nisyonis. We have Nisyonis. Every one of us in our life have Nisyonis. And even if to these big tzaddikim chassidim it's like this, but to us it's, Chazal say to some people it's kechut asayda and to some people it's nidmal hem kahar. When you're in a situation, the nisoyin is a mouth. For the other person, it's kechut asayda. It's not a big deal. So the Yud-Beis Yud-Gimmel Tammuz gives us the courage. If a chosser like the Ben Shem Tov could fast for 7 days for his tefillin, if the Frierdiker Rebbe could figure out a trick to bring in Advar Torah Bar Mezuzah in the infamous Shmalerke, so we could put our inhibitions aside and do what our neshama wants us to do what the Rebbeinu Shalom wants us to do in our own life, and to influence all the Eden around us. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. I got Simon, Shayabot, all the time. And Shayabot, Simon, well, Shayabot, Chaim, Chaim, Chaim.
Yeah.
The Frierdiker Rebbe says, it's in the Yom today, that one of the things that the Farbrengen or Yud-Beis Tammuz that we should discuss about Kriyasitim LaTorah. So I guess we have to discuss it. It's the beginning of the summer. The summer has a unique opportunity. People are more relaxed. People are more relaxed in the summer. There's a little more time. In America, there's vacation in the summer. There's a little more time. The time we have to utilize. There's a letter from the Rebbe is writing to children who are graduating. A human being could only go underwater to dive. In the old days, they dive for pearls. People can hold their breath for 7 minutes, 10 minutes. But how long could you? They'd go diving down to the ocean to get the sponges. How long could you dive? You have to have oxygen. You have to have oxygen. So during the year, the Rebbe writes, there's unfortunately in most schools there is secular studies. Neshama doesn't live from secular studies. Neshama lives from Gemara Rashi Tosfos. The oxygen from a neshama is Rambam, Kesef Mishnah, Magid Mishnah. The oxygen from a neshama is Lakuta Torah, and Tanya. That's the oxygen of a neshama. So in the summer is a time to relax. So to give time for our neshama, to give extra time. It's remarkable. The Chassidus says that the summer is an easier time to do Avodas Hashem. It's so counterintuitive. I think about this all the time. Like if you ask the Bala Musa, they'll tell you, in the winter it's a little easier. People walk; they're usually 90% dressed. But in the summer, l'chayr is harder. No, it is the fakert. In the summer, because the sun is out, the fact that it's longer days, there's a certain relaxation in the summer that allows that it should be easier to do. There's zaitik zachen that might be in a zionis. That's a separate issue. But be'etzem, once you're into avodas Hashem, the summer is an easier time for avodas Hashem. We have to listen. We have to take it in. Because, we always think, it's not that way. We think the summer's a hard time. It's not. There's time of being relaxed. What better could you have? In the old days didn't have air conditioning. So, I love the summer. Chaya. What's the problem? If it gets a little hot, you turn on the air conditioning. But the long days, it's machaya. You get up, the sun is up. You have a long day. It's a nice weather. There are studies that show in places where the weather is dreary, that that the mortality rate, the rate of people committing suicide is much higher. Why? Because it's somatic. It's a fenster omadik. It's dark and it's depressing. But when it's hot, it's nice. It's long days. And the Chassidus says the sun is out. It symbolizes Shemesh Umogen Hashem Elokim. The sun symbolizes the idea of revelation, of godly revelation. We're relaxed, and it's a good time for Avodas Hashem. So Rabbi say we have to know that Tammuz is a good time. Chazal say Tammuz that Chamre b'tkufas Tammuz kridalei. That a Chamoyer b'tkufas Tammuz he's very cold. But you have to be a chamoyer, like a chamoyer sherepinchas benyor, a real chamoyer. Chamoyer is always cold, but Eid has to be warm. So we have to know that now it's Tkufas Tammuz. We have to take in, and give our neshama what the neshama wants. Neshama relaxes when we sit with a Gemara. Neshama relaxes when we sit with a Rambam. Neshama relaxes when we sit with a Lakuta Sichos and with a Lakuta Torah. So we should give that vacation, that relaxation to our neshama. We should give it. Our neshama deserves it. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim.
Time for that.
Early years. After Friday, I'm going to say this in the summer. That it's me smells. It should be equal because of the Shabbat. It's something to that. Early. It's there.
That's why it's there.
So much feeling.
Chaim l'chaim.
You want them?
No, because we're not to read like that.
One, two, down.
Yes, right.
That's what happens.
It's here.
Then what?
Shemtov letter, but yeah, there's a letter, there's an invitation that Shem wrote to the soldier. He wrote Lanachas, quick English that question, two big words. So when I young man Rosh Hashanah, I usually go on Avad, the day the Cherevis, so young man, I get shipped to them, I talk to them. It's a funny. It's okay. So the Rebbe wrote it back. It was like more than so this morning, I'm looking at this, and I looked at Rebbe's letter. And then who walks over to me? Bartel's youngest son. So I said, no, so my brother told me that some people are using lately this nusach. I said, yeah, I use it for my son's bar mitzvah. I said, do you have a copy of it? So he right away texted me. But I just finished learning this letter.
Yes.
So he sent me this, and he sent me the copy of the letter that the Rebbe sent to Rav Sternbuch. I can send it to you in a minute. You see that it was, Savyad, the Sofis.
What
Let's have a mind. Let's mention. Let's have a mind. Shira Malus, Meshuba Dana Shivazin, Mother Ozimola, Spagino, Ruba, Goye, make De La Noina, Simile, De La Noina, oh, you know, Sir Mechim, sure, I don't know, yes, Prisano. Ikim Baneged, Azoidim Bedim, Abedi, no Yikzoid, living a whole life. The Kale, Hobakai, nice, and Yasha Kazora, oh, Yaboy Bedi, no, say, yeah, boys. They don't know what going on. Or, because no one like, Russian ring light for the world. It's true, Hassan. Sees me and gives me regards to my son, like looking for good. That's the first time.
Ellie.
Something parents don't realize what they have.
I realize.
Yeah, that's for you. Yeah. It's important that they hear from someone that's not a parent how it's perceived. Great question. So I'm not.
Yeah, but you don't want to.
I'm excited about it.
It's a song.
I'm telling you, so you're not going to make an art.
Baruch Ato Adinu, Hoje uma agora dela vai fazer não cobrar isso que marca mais certo mas não vou fazer outro
É muito rápido,
كيف يقدرون هنا فلوس من زمان فانا شو بقول ما يدرون فلوس Oh, but that's another. I try to put on main enough. So, give me the one I was over the job option. I'm going to know you shall know. I think I'll be moved and out. On the they should have been a good rather than a boat of the night, the neighbor of another equal night. It's the turn of the Guinea. No,
I know, I lost the something from my father. It's the outside day.
My grandfather's. So much I believe.
Like one more tap.
Oh, yeah?
Should I wait until?
No, why don't you come? No, make it the nights. You want to come in tomorrow night? Make us come here next week, one of the nights?
Fine.
Huh?
Oh, shit. Sacramento.